Welcome to an all-new episode of the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us. We take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of combat sports. A lot of stuff going on. No fights, major fights that we had to talk about for this program, but, we have plenty of ones coming up. We have a big presser that's going to talk about some event that's going to be coming up in April over in Italy, the BKFC, holding their press conference over in Florence to prop up that card and having some of the fighters over there as well as Conor McGregor to promote it. We'll break that down. We'll also have a bunch of fights that have been announced over the last couple of weeks for the BKFC. We'll get into some of those and might not even have time. There's so many of them to really break them down, but we'll do that, of course, as the weeks continue and we get closer and closer to those fights. We'll also talk again about the PFL announcing yet another division in its, of course, season of fights this year, the playoffs. No longer regular season playoffs. It's just bracket style, as we said. And the tournament this year, keep getting more and more details week by week of who is going to be in it. We'll talk about the women's flyweight division coming up on the show later on. Then we're going to talk to some of the fighters. We're going to talk to Keith Rockstar Richardson from the BKFC, the bantamweight former champion, about his fight coming up out in Albuquerque at the end of this month. We will talk to Adam Borics, who we found out last week is going to be part of this PFL tournament. And we will also talk to lights out heavyweight Devon Simons, who's going to be joining the organization for his first fight and making his way out there for them coming up soon. So we'll get all those on the show later on. First, let's talk about what we saw out there in Italy this past weekend. Of course, Cyrus Fees was out there for the BKFC. We also have Conor McGregor out there, as were some of the fighters. You had Rico Franco, Jimmy Sweeney, and of course the headliners for that card as well in Lorenzo Hunt and Chris Camozzi. That's right, Lorenzo Hunt was there, because if you only watched the beginning of the press conference, Cyrus said that he was not going to be able to attend. So we had Cyrus asking some questions of some of the fighters that were there on the dais, the other fighters. We had some of the promoters who were helping to make it happen out in Florence there. And then Conor McGregor was brought out, of course, making his own entrance. Had the whole drum line with him, dressed in the old school Italian Florence garb. He made his statements. He took questions as well. So a lot of action going on, as always. Whenever Conor's involved, there's got to be some pomp and circumstance. And he made sure of that. And we have a lot of different things to talk about from these guys and what they said at this press conference. First, let's talk about Dave Feldman, who was not there, talking about the fight. And he's saying that, they're thrilled to do this fight, that it made sense for them to have this fight at the top. For the BKFC fans out there in Italy, there's a lot of fans from Italy, he said. Of course, they have some fighters like Francesco Ricci, who was from Italy originally. And the rematch of these two, the first fight of Lorenzo Hunt being back, trying to recapture his belt that Chris Camozzi took while he was away, that it's going to be a huge fight. And how excited he is also to have Rico Franco and Sweeney going at it. Third time for these guys, first time in the BKFC. So unfortunately, we didn't have Dave Feldman there to talk about it, but the guy's very busy doing a lot of deals, as we will see when we go further and further into these fight cards. We had, of course, Conor McGregor making his entrance, talking about a couple different things there. One of the questions that people asked him, of course, that keeps coming up every time is, we know he's part of it, the ownership of the BKFC. He talks about that hunger, that fire that they have, and how exciting it is for him. Is he ever going to get in there, take the gloves off, and mix it up? Let's see his answer.
For sure. If you think I'm up here giving these speeches and leading these men into battle, and I won't step in there myself, think again. For sure, Conor McGregor will fight in bare knuckle fighting championship. Mark my words.
Now, of course, Conor still has 2 fights on his UFC contract, so unless they work something out with the UFC, which I don't see happening, despite the BKFC and the UFC talking about maybe a guy like Robbie Lawler coming over, I just don't see it happening until Conor satisfies that contract. So we got to see him in the UFC before he can get in on the BKFC, I'm sure. But, of course, they asked him, who would you want to fight? And there were some names he brought up. He said he wants a title. So even if it's the King of Violence belt to Mike Perry, he would be up for that. Also brought up names like Jeremy Stevens. Of course, just had a great fight against Eddie Alvarez, who he also brought up, saying, rematching him from their days, of course, in the UFC. None of those guys have belts except for Mike Perry with the King of Violence belt right now. He talked about wanting to have a belt. So we'll see if it's names like that he fights first, or if he gets right in on the title picture and tries to make something happen at lightweight or or welterweight. Or he got pretty big to do that Roadhouse movie. Maybe it's even something at welterweight. We'll see. But there's a lot of different options for him, and a lot of different names that are being floated, of course. But all that remains to be seen, and is still waiting for the future right now as I think he still has to satisfy that UFC contract before he can even think about taking off the gloves fully and fighting for the BKFC. But, another guy who talked about possibly being there, every time he's out there, he mentions some big name. Seems like he was talking about Fedor. And he said they're working on something with Fedor. And, let's do the deal, Fedor, at the press conference. But, does that mean Fedor's fighting? It's been a while since Fedor fought. Do we see one of the greatest mixed martial artists, heavyweights of all time, take off the gloves and do that? I mean, I'm sure that would be right in his wheelhouse. But let's not forget he also is a big coach with MMA right now, having a bunch of different fighters under his wing as he instructs them and teaches them. So maybe it's a situation where he brings some of them over. We will see. But Fedor's name being floated now, too, by Conor McGregor. A lot to say. And as we said, he had the big circumstantial, the big entrance. Always got to be the pomp and circumstance. Well, another guy who likes a big entrance, even though we're told he wasn't there, is, of course, Lorenzo Hunt. Even though they said he wasn't there, and he wasn't there for a while. Chris Camozzi wasn't fooled by it. And as we saw later on, Hunt made an entrance and showed up and, did the juggernaut the way he does himself. The way he acts is the way he acts. He's got to come in there. He's got to cause a stir. That's the way he likes to do it, and did it once again.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lorenzo Hunt.
I told you.
Unless I say so. How you get this?
You say so.
How'd you get this?
Hey, that seems like you, huh? You want to steal it?
Did you beat the champ?
You want to steal it?
I'm a thief.
We know. We already know. Unanimous, huh? You forgot?
What round you win?
What do you know about cheating?
Round did you win?
You know about
Tell
cheating,
the
huh?
people.
You know about
What round
cheating?
did you win?
1 through 3, baby.
All right, y'all, go look it up. He ain't winning nothing. He'll never win. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a rematch. This is a rematch of a great fight that took place.
See, he wants to steal it. He don't want to beat me for it. He wants to steal it. Go ahead, steal it. You think the belt makes me? I am the man.
Now, of course, as you know, this is a rematch. As they said, these guys fought for that cruiserweight title that Lorenzo Hunt used to hold. He held 185 and 205 before trying to go up to heavyweight, where he lost to Mick Terrell. Of course, it fell awkwardly, had that arm broken. And, there was word out there that he was suspended, that he popped for test, and that he was suspended for that. He was at the press conference and said that's not true. Camozzi brought that up multiple times, said he was a cheater, said, that's why we're doing it in Italy, so you can juice all you want. Of course, Lorenzo Hunt denied that, said he posted evidence that all that was clear and that he was out 9 months suspension because of an elbow injury. But now he's back, and Camozzi apparently chose this as where he's going to defend that title for the first time. They said he had input on this, that he chose Italy. He's got some Italian roots. So we'll see if all that is real. But as Camozzi pointed out, Lorenzo Hunt saying unanimously won is not the case. It was a split decision. And it wasn't really an exciting fight either, for either of them. Both of them were very cautious. Both of them seemed like they were respecting the other one probably a little more than they ever have before against other opponents. And it wasn't the most exciting fight. So now we will see if we can get a better fight in this rematch and see what kind of war we will get between these two guys. And we will see how that happens. Lorenzo Hunt, as you heard him say, there ain't no champ unless I am. Like he said in this quote that you saw right there. He claims he gave him a concussion and a broken orbital. I haven't seen that, but that guy's only shined during his absence. Camozzi talking about how this is not the champ anymore, that he's the one. He left too many questions unanswered, and that he's going to make sure he does not do that and leave it in the hands of judges this time. We will see when these two guys match up at the end of April, but it's going to be a great fight, as will Rico Franco and Sweeney. Let's not forget those guys. They were there. They had some great answers as well. They fought 2 times so far. Split, one with Franco by KO TKO, one by Sweeney, Dr. Stoppage. Franco was 3-0 in the BKFC before losing also to Trout. Jimmy Sweeney making his first fight in the BKFC. 33 bare-knuckle fights before, though. Going to be an awesome card out there in Florence, Italy, and it was a great press conference.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. the New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You watch playoff games. The playoffs are all that matter, and the league's got an issue. They just don't want to admit it. They brag about how huge they are, how global they are, ratings are through the roof, profits are through the roof. I mean, between the NBA and NHL lying about their ratings and the money they make, I'm sick and tired of it.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I guess this is the battle for second place in the NBA's MVP. It's been Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He was like minus 250 a couple months ago. Then last month it was 3-1. I mean, it's now up to minus 440 here.
Voter fatigue is a real thing, but there is a chance for him to maybe go on a hot tear, go on a stretch that maybe opens the conversation back up a little bit. I wouldn't say Shai's completely out of the woods just yet.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. We continue to talk about the BKFC and some of the great cards that we'll be seeing coming up in the coming up weeks and months in the next little while here. There's a lot that have been announced over the last couple of weeks. We didn't have time to get them in before, but let's break it all down now just briefly because there's so much to announce. We don't even have time to really dig deep into it, and we'll do so in the coming weeks. We just talked about that Italy card at the end of April. Let's go back in time a little bit and talk about what we're going to be seeing coming to you in March right now. Now, of course, March 21st, we had seen on the schedule that there would be a BKFC fight night in Philly. They just had Knucklemania 5 there and going to go right back into their home base there. So of course, BKFC is centered there in Philly. Their offices are there. That's where a lot of the guys that are running things have made their bones, including Dave Feldman. So they're going to go back to Philly. And we now know that it's going to be headlined by Dustin Pegg and Andrew Angelcourt. Now, of course, Pegg was supposed to fight on Knucklemania 5. That fight fell apart, but won't have to wait too long and go right back to the same spot in Philadelphia. He's, of course, coming off that loss to Carlos Trinidad Snake, the knockout loss that he had. That was a stoppage that, kind of ruined where he was going right there. He had a nice streak going with the BKFC before that, 3 wins in a row, coming off the unanimous decision win over Joe Elmore before that. So it's going to be a big one. He wants redemption. He wants to get back into the mix as possibly being a title contender. He'll do that against Andrew Angelcourt, who, of course, had a couple nice fights there. We haven't seen him for a while, for almost a year now after his fight against Ruben War, but had a couple great fights for the BKFC out in California. Now he's going to come cross-country. Barstow Finest is going to come over and fight in Philly. I feel like there's a, kind of a commonality with guys like Barstow and guys in Philly, kind of that same kind of scrappy underdog mentality that they always have. And of course, different from the city of Philadelphia to, the small city of Barstow, but still, I think they, are going to have some commiserating there between him and the fight fans in Philly. Then, the following week, March 27th, down there in Hollywood, Florida. They love going there, and they load the cards when they do, and they are doing that once again. Let's talk about some of these great fights, starting with Luis Baboon Palomino versus Howard H.D. Davis. We see the return of the Baboon. Now, we didn't see him since he lost that title over a year ago now, 2024, early February. He lost to No Doubt Trout down there in Florida. Has not fought since, and now he will fight Howard H.D. Davis, of course, the long, rangy fighter who has fought both featherweight and lightweight. This one will be at lightweight. Well, Palomino was the former champ. Of course, H.D. Davis coming off that beatdown of Get Down Brown. He picked him apart down there in Florida and will look to do the same against Palomino. The fans there are going to be very split. Those guys both, headquartered in that area. So we'll see who they get behind, but that could be a very interesting fight between two great tactical fighters. Then you also have at heavyweight, Leonardo Perdomo getting back in there after his big win over Levi DaCosta back there in December. Another quick early round 1 victory for him, and he's going to be fighting Aurelius here. Steve Aurelius coming off the loss to Copeland. He's 1-1 in the BKFC. This is going to be a tough test for him going against Perdomo. Both these guys have some great power, but Perdomo has just been bulldozing through the heavyweight division. And, you have to wonder if he's going to get a title shot if he gets this victory and continues to climb up into the top 5 of that heavyweight division. Also, we will have a bantamweight fight between Russo and Street on this card as well. That's going to be a nice scrappy fight between those guys. And then also at bantamweight, you will have Justin Ibarola versus Velasquez. Now, Ibarola, of course, is ranked in this division. We're going to talk about him coming up with our man Keith Rockstar Richardson in a little while. Talk about why are these two fighting, the two of the top in this division. Well, Ibarola is going to be fighting against Velasquez right now. Ibarola undefeated 6-0 in the BKFC. Velasquez, on the other hand, coming off a win over Travis the Animal Thompson, but also fighting boxing at the same time in MMA. His last fight was an MMA fight that he lost, boxing fight, that glove boxing that he lost by unanimous decision. But can he knock Ibarola off his post here as one of the top fighters in this division? I don't know. That's going to be a tough battle for him. And I hope after Ibarola, has his fight, and maybe after if we get a win from him and a win from Keith Rockstar Richardson, those guys aren't fighting for the title. Why are they not fighting each other? We got to see these guys do battle and see who is the one that should be fighting Blas for that belt. Then we're going to go overseas for the BKFC, far overseas. For the first time, they're going to Dubai. And not only are they going to go there and put on a card, they're going to put on 2 of them. Back-to-back nights, April 4th and 5th. We're going to get 2 fight cards from Dubai for the BKFC for their first foray into the Middle East. And they're going to headline the April 4th card with a title fight there with Austin No Doubt Trout defending his belt against Carlos Trinidad Snake for the welterweight title of the BKFC. Now, of course, Trout last fought in Spain against Rico Franco, where he kept that title, defended it for the first time out there October. Then Trinidad Snake, on the other hand, had a great fight in his last fight where he got a 3rd-round TKO against Zach Jusola. He's been on a roll so far, beating guys like Elvin Brito, Dustin Pegg, Rynell Riley. So he continues to be undefeated and finally gets his shot at the belt at the welterweight title against Austin No Doubt Trout April 4th over there in Dubai. Then the following night, April 5th, Kai Stewart defends his featherweight title once again, this time against Tommy Steerdam, the South African. Now, of course, you have Kai Stewart coming off the win over Jimmy Rivera in a unanimous decision, but probably a lot closer than the scores even say, depending on how you judge some of those slips that could have been called knockdowns. But now he's going to be facing Tommy Steerdam for his title there, who is making his BKFC debut, I believe. Has had some nice fights, some good bare knuckle boxing experience. But now he faces another level here in King Kai Stewart. And we'll see how he does in that fight against King Kai in Dubai. This is going to be an interesting fight. Not a guy that was really in the picture if you're looking at just the rankings there. I'm sorry, I correct myself. Tommy Steerdam has fought for the BKFC, obviously. A couple fights here under his belt out in Omaha and then Newcastle. This is going to be a step up in competition, obviously, though, from guys like Cody Land, Corey Roberts, and John Spencer. He's going to be fighting for that title against King Kai. And this is going to be a different kind of battle for him. Can he rise to the level of competition he's going to be facing and get that title? So far, nobody else has. And we'll see if he is the one to put that title weight, that featherweight strap around his waist. Not sure, though. Either way, that's going to be a great back-to-back night of fights there out in Dubai for the BKFC. And then BKFC also going to Australia. They have not announced when or where or who just yet, but they have put out there on social media that they'll be fighting down under for the first time. I mean, look at where the BKFC is headed early in 2025. They're going to be going to Italy. They're going to be going to Dubai. They're going to be going to Australia. They went to Philly for the first time here in the U.S. They are continuing to expand and grow and show what this sport is all about here at BKFC in 2025.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I talked about AZ Fudd a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in a conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I feel when I look at this Arizona team, I don't take them serious as a national title threat because you're asking Caleb Love to bottle magic that I just don't even think exists.
4.4, 6.6, 7.4, 7.7, 7.8. This guy is literally he'll shoot you out of games, Kevin.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid, and we continue to take our look at the divisions that have been announced by the PFL for their tournaments this coming year. Of course, as we mentioned a couple of times now, tournament format changing, straight bracket, 8 fighters in there. You match up bracket style, win and move on, loser is done. I'm sure they'll set up some other kind of feature fights or some backup fights maybe for later on in case they need them from the women who unfortunately and men who don't make it past that bracket. But right now, as I said, the women, because that's who we're going to focus on this one. The latest division that was announced was the women's flyweight division for the PFL tournament this year, 125 pounds. These are the 8 women who are going to be vying for that championship and that $500,000 in bonus money at the end. You look at the picture right there, you can see some of them. Let's break it down a little bit. Laura Donna, Brazil, is going to be in their 7-0 record in MMA, mostly submissions, former Jungle Fight champion. So, not really much experience as far as the upper levels of MMA over here in the U.S. With some of these other organizations, but have a very good start to her career so far, especially down there in Brazil. Then you also have Diana Asfagara, who is from Russia. 26-year-old is 6-1 in her MMA career. She's fought in Bellator, won her first 6 fights before losing her first fight to Justine Kish back in August of 2023. So haven't seen her for a while after the whole crossover of Bellator into the PFL. We'll see how she's been doing. If she has progressed in that time off, had a great start to her career. How does she rebound from that first loss and taking all this time off? You also have Alara Joan from Brazil. The 30-year-old is 12-9 in her MMA career. She's fought in Bellator and the PFL, so a little bit more higher level experience here, but she lost 3 in a row to Bruna Ellen, Jenna Bishop, Tyler Santos, remember those names for a second, but beat Shanna Young last June by decision in order to get back into the winning track. So she had a great start, had a couple losses here in a row, but now rebounded with the win last year. We'll see if she can continue and make it 2 in a row when she gets in her first matchup of this tournament. As we said before, one of the names that you're going to know in this that you see up there, Liz Carmouche from the U.S., of course, the Guerrilla. The 40-year-old is 22-8 in her MMA career. Has fought for the UFC, has fought for Bellator, has fought for PFL. So she's been against the best of the best in all divisions, in all organizations of this division. She has losses against Ronda Rousey, Misha Tate, Valentina Shevchenko when she was in the UFC. So she's fought the top ladies in this weight class and others in her time in her MMA career. She had a 9-fight win streak in Bellator and the PFL after leaving the UFC before losing to Tyler Santos last August. She has wins last year over Velasquez and Watanabe, who are also in this tournament, as you see. So a lot of experience against top-level opponents, especially ones that are fighting in this tournament. That could help her out, give her a little insight into how to beat them possibly when she matches up with one of them down the line. The aforementioned Kana Watanabe, as we said, from Japan. Watanabe is 36 years old. She's fought in Rizin, Bellator, and the PFL. 13-3-1 in her career. Mostly decision wins for her throughout her career so far. She has a loss to Carmouche, not once but twice. So, I'm sure that's a matchup she is hoping to avoid. If you lose to someone once, you probably want to get a chance at them to try to show that you are better. If you lose to them twice, you're probably saying, you know what? Might be better for me if I have to face them to the end. We'll see. Of course, none of these ladies are going to be scared of anybody, but that is not history that goes in her favor in this tournament, depending how the bracket shakes out. Jenna Bishop, also from the U.S., a 38-year-old, 7-2 in her career, Bellator and the PFL. She lost her last two fights to Tyler Santos and Dakota Ditcheva in the playoffs. Santos was at the end of the regular season last year. Ditcheva in the playoffs last year for the PFL. We'll see now how she rebounds in this one. Started her career 6-0 with 4 submissions before those back-to-back losses in the last two fights. So we'll see how her mind is set up right now after those, where she fits into this, has experience, as we said, against many of these fighters already. Juliana Velasquez from Brazil, a 38-year-old, is 13-3, has fought in Bellator and now the PFL. She lost 3 times in a row to Liz Carmouche between fights in Bellator and the PFL. First by TKO, then by submission, lastly by decision. So she has lost every which way to the Gorilla. Probably does not want to face her until the very end of this one. Most of her wins are by decision. She's one that's going to try to outlast you till the end of the fight and see what the judges do with that fight. We'll see how she matches up in this one. And last but not least, Tyler Santos from Brazil. The 31-year-old is fought in the UFC and the PFL. 22-4 in her career. Had a 4-fight UFC win streak before she lost to Shevchenko for the title. Had a 3-fight PFL win streak before losing to Dakota Ditcheva for the title last year. So a wealth of experience against the top fighters. If you're going to look at this bracket, you can look at these ladies. Of course, it all depends on how the matchups shake out, but obviously Tyler Santos, who's just fighting for that $1 million check last year for the PFL, has to be once a favorite, as does a Liz Carmouche or maybe even a Juliana Velasquez. Some of these fighters who have had success against some of the top opponents in the top promotions before. We'll see when that bracket breaks out how things are favored and how the matchups go. All that will factor in, and we look forward to seeing it all shake out here for the PFL.
I guess this is the battle for second place in the NBA's MVP. It's been Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He was like minus 250 a couple months ago. Then last month it was 3-1. He is now up to minus 440 here.
Voter fatigue is a real thing, but there is a chance for him to maybe go on a hot tear, go on a stretch that maybe opens the conversation back up a little bit. I wouldn't say Shai's completely out of the woods just yet.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
You watch playoff games. The playoffs are all that matter. The league's got an issue. They just don't want to admit it. They brag about how huge they are, how global they are. Ratings are through the roof. Profits are through the roof. I mean, between the NBA and NHL lying about their ratings and the money they make, I'm sick and tired of it.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
I talked about AZ Fun a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in a conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Let's get into talking to some of these fighters, find out what's going on with them, their minds as they prepare for some of these great battles that we have coming up over the next couple months. And one of those guys we're going to talk to first is Keith Rockstar Richardson from the BKFC, the bantamweight, the former champion, who's looking to get back in there and try to make more strides towards that title. Now, Keith, welcome back to the show. We appreciate your time, man. Hope you had some good holidays. Now you're ready for 2025. I saw that you're so into getting back in there and getting to fight quickly, because it was not that long. I think it was 90 days since you last fought back in December. You're saying that, you only took a vacation last year for the first time in forever. And even then you weren't actually taking time off, that you were actually focused. You're still training even when you were trying to quote unquote relax from, MMA and competition and running your gym.
Yeah, that was like the first real vacation I've ever taken in my life, really. I went to Medellin, Colombia, but even the whole time I was there, I was still training. This is what I live for. I could have, after my last fight, I could have probably taken a little bit of a break, kind of waited for them to try to get a shot, but I want to stay busy, I want to stay active, I want to stay fighting. I don't want downtime. I'm better when I'm fighting continuously.
And now you will be fighting on the 28th out there in Albuquerque, headlining that card against Bekzad Usmanov. You said you want to stay active, that you could have waited for them to figure things out. Is that why this fight is happening? Because when we talked to you after that Larimore fight, you said you want to shot the title. You thought that just domination by you, 21-second finish, proved why you are still a top contender in this division. You wanted a shot at redemption against Blas. But that obviously is not where we're coming at here. We're not even getting another top 5 opponent against you. How did this fight come about? Is it just because you wanted to get back in there and get working and get paid, or is it that for another reason that they're putting this matchup together?
Pretty much like that. Bekzad was supposed to be my opponent originally for the date on the Larimore fight. I don't think too many guys in the division really want to fight me right now. But because I'm not a guy that will turn down fights. I told them I wanted to stay busy, I wanted to stay active. Bekzad, stepped up, so we're fighting. Pretty much my mindset is that right now I'm the number 1 contender. Everybody else, they can they'll either get it now or when I've got the belt. It doesn't really matter to me. There's only one guy ahead of me. That's focused. Everybody else, if I've got to take them out first, that's fine. If I want to stay active, I want to stay fighting, I want to stay sharp. That was the only thing that really bothered me. After I won the title was I went from fighting 4 times in 10 months to not getting a fight for 9 months. I just didn't like that. I like to be in there, I like to be fighting, I like to be scrapping. I don't want to waste a lot of time. Outside there, not fighting.
Well, you're saying that everyone in division is, other guys are scared to fight you. Have you brought up these other names to the BKFC? Have there been discussions with any of these guys? Because when you're looking at the other guys in the top 5, obviously you and Ibarol are 2 guys that are, on great win streaks. He has, undefeated so far. Some of the other guys like Reber just lost. You can understand him not being in there, or maybe even Garcia, has a great win streak going as well as the other guys in that top 5. Have you brought up any of these names to the BKFC to try to, propel that fight, to get those, that situation where there's no way they can deny you a title shot, or is it just other things are going on and just whoever they propose to you is what you're going to go with?
Really, I'm not a huge call out guy. It's just not my style, not my thing. Anybody that wants can get it. I feel I'm in this to be the best in the world. Why am I going to turn down fights? Everybody, everybody below me right now, like that's ranked below me, like I feel like I am ranked ahead of them for a reason. Everybody else is just a meal.
Well, you are always game to go and to fight and scrap, and you've never been one to turn anything down. As you said, Usmanov was a guy you were supposed to fight, and it unfortunately didn't happen. You ended up fighting Larimore instead and putting an exclamation point on that victory. Now, do you think it makes it, I'm not going to say easier for you, but like that you're already kind of mentally prepared for Usmanov before, that you could find even more things, that you have almost extra time to prepare for him between what you were doing leading up to that last fight and then now preparing for him this fight camp as well?
Not like I wouldn't say I wouldn't say it makes it easier or harder. I do a decent amount of studying, but a lot of it, there's always certain things that we set that we're going to be looking for and stuff like that. I'd say probably the weirdest thing for me right now is he's the first non-southpaw I've had in quite a while, which doesn't really matter to me one way or the other because I switch so much. But it's just it's kind of nice going ortho a little bit.
You posted on your social media towards the end of last year that you're talking about. It was a tough year. Obviously, like you talked about the waiting, the things that happened in your record, but that your focus right now, you have a renewed fire. What does that mean for you? What is the renewed fire? What do you obviously your performances weren't lacking any fire ever before. Every time you step in that squared circle, you're ready to go. You're ready to mix it up. So, what is a renewed fire for Rockstar Richardson, who seems to have fire every time he puts, his fists up and gets ready to match up against his opponent?
Just that one fight, I could tell with the long layoff, it wasn't that I always train hard, but there's a big difference between training hard and training hungry. It felt like, training for 9-10 months without a fight. I'm gonna train hard and I'm gonna train consistent. I'm not taking downtime, but there's a big difference between training hard and training hungry. I was preparing to try to keep something instead of take something. And that's just a different mindset. So I think I kind of stumbled, but that was the first loss I've taken in 6-7 years. It was sometimes you need that to light a fire under your ass. So that definitely that was definitely a wake up call. And then I felt like after that one loss, everybody was starting to doubt me. Does this guy still have it? I think it would have made after that before the Larimore fight. I think a lot of guys were a little bit more willing to take the fight. And now after this Larimore fight, everybody's like, oh, okay, well, he's still not somebody that we really want to. Especially if right now, if I don't have the belt, a lot of guys aren't looking for this fight. They'll try to. If I've got the belt around my waist now, they have no choice. But right now, it's a scary prospect to fight me, especially without the strap right now.
We have just 30 seconds left, but you talked about that belt, talked about wanting it. If you win this fight, do you think there's any chance that BKFC can keep you from that rematch?
No, not at this point. I don't know who they've met, who's matched me up, but I think it's undeniable after this next fight.
He is the rock star Keith Richardson, the former bantamweight champ, trying to get back up and capture that glory once again. Going to be headlining this fight card out in Albuquerque, February 28th against Usmanov. Keith, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great fight.
Appreciate it. Pleasure every time, buddy.
I talked about AZ fight a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in a conference tournament, I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
You watch playoff games. The playoffs are all that matter, and the league's got an issue. They just don't want to admit it. They brag about how huge they are, how global they are, ratings are through the roof, profits are through the roof. I mean, between the NBA and NHL lying about their ratings and the money they make, I'm sick and tired of it.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid, and we have been getting into these great brackets that we've being released through the PFL for their tournament this upcoming season. We're looking forward to watching a lot of these matchups, seeing how they play out, who's going to match up against who. We talked about some of the brackets last week. One of those that we mentioned was the featherweight bracket, and one of those guys is going to be taking a part here is Adam Borics, who's going to be joining us right now on the show. Adam, thanks so much for coming on with us. We appreciate your time. We're really looking forward to you getting back there in the cage and being part of this tournament with the PFL. Now, you started with the PFL with the format that it was last year, of course. Unfortunately, had to pull out of that tournament because of injury. What were you going through? What were some things you were dealing with at the time? How have you healed up, and how excited are you to get back in there and show people what you can do once again?
That injury is past. You know, I had a fractured ankle, but it's 100% now. You know, I was kept training since maybe October last year. So I'm really excited and I really want to fight now as soon as possible.
Well, you know, that was your first foray into the PFL. Now things have changed. It's almost like, you know, you new boss, but same old format that you used to, because obviously you have experience with Bellator before they bought the PFL. How are you, you know, feeling now that they have changed the format from the regular season and playoffs like they had to the format that you're used to with Bellator in the Grand Prix format, where, you know, just a bracket, you face your fighter and you move on, and it's just, you know, win and go on for a couple fights here. How do you like the changes that have been put in by the PFL this year?
I mean, I like the change, you know. It's only one shot. I think every fight you have to go like, this is your one shot, you know, and I think it's a huge opportunity and motivation, and I always want to fight with the best, you know, and I think PFL is the place for that.
And, you know, there's a lot of talent in this pool, but you obviously have, you know, experience fighting the best of the best in Bellator. You know, when you look back at your record, you know, you fought Pitbull for the title. You fought Pac Hearn, Pico, you know, the best that the Bellator has had to offer in this division. How do you feel like you were situated with your experience versus some of these other guys who may be a little newer to the tournament format, or, you know, maybe, you know, just rising up the ranks here and facing the level that you've already faced time and time again already?
You know, I signed with Bellator when I was a kid, and, you know, my nickname is a kid, but I can tell you I became a man, and I have a lot of experience, and I think it's a big fact for me. You know, I have a lot of experience. I had 5 rounds with one of the best on the world, and I'm ready to prove it. I am one of the best in the world, and it's simple for me, you know. My goal is to become the champion.
Now, obviously, you're not in control of the matchups. You know, you got to see who they put you against and where the bracket breaks as far as fights go. But when you look at the lineup that they put together, the Pinedo, Kelly, Kennedy, Landu, Braga, are there anybody that you're looking at that maybe you want, you like to fight at some point in this tournament, or does it not matter to you, and just whoever's in front of you, that fight is the one you're going to get, and then, you just focus on that aspect in front of you?
Exactly what you said. I really don't care. Just, put me somebody, and I cannot wait to fight and prove it. I am the best.
You have moved around over the years. You obviously started over in Hungary. Now you've been living in the U.S. for a while now. What was the big change for you to make that move to the U.S. and start training here full time, to bring your family from all that you grew accustomed to and grew up with over there to change into the U.S.? As you said, you came into this when you were a kid. It's a big change and a big shift in your lifestyle when you make that at a young age you did. How do you feel now, and how has that helped you feel that you've grown in your career because of that?
I mean, I had to make that decision. It wasn't easy, but I had a dream to become the best, and I think I learned a lot. I got a lot from Florida. I used to live here now, and I had to come here because I had to train. If you want to be the best, you have to train with the best guys on the world. And I mean, I really like it. I have so many friends now in the States, and I can tell you I improved a lot in the last 7 or 8 years. I don't know how long I am here now, but it's definitely worth it.
And how big has it been for you, your growth mentally in the sport and around the fighters that you are? Because obviously you came in hot in Bellator. You had 4 wins in a row. You really started you put your name out there for people before suffering that first loss. Then another great win streak, but you had almost a year off earlier with the fight between Kennedy and Burrell. Then you had almost 2 years off before you came back with the PFL here. Now another year off because of injury. What is that like for you going through that part of it? Obviously for a lot of fighters, they love fighting. They know fighting. That's what they've grown up around. But what's it been like for you to deal with the downtime in between the fight with Pitbull and then the first fight in the PFL and now the time off from last year to here recovering from that injury?
I mean, it was a tough time for me. After the Pitbull fight, I had an ACL surgery, so that was a long layoff. And I came back and I won my first comeback fight. It was a really hard time, but funny. Oh, nice, I'm back. And after I got injured, I was out. I had to pull out from the tournament, so I had to wait until this time, again. So it was definitely hard for me. I mean, mentally, but I can tell you, it made me much stronger mentally. So yeah, I just, like I said, I became a man now.
Well, we are looking forward to seeing when you get that first fight. For people who may not have seen you a lot in Bellator or maybe didn't catch that PFL fight last year, what do you want people to know the most about you, to know about the kid as he gets ready to take over this tournament for the 145ers in PFL this year?
I always bring excited fights, and I'm going to leave my heart in the cage every time when I step in there. So I guarantee excited fights.
Adam Borics, one of the featherweights, going to be making his way towards that title in this tournament for the PFL this year. Thanks so much for joining us. We're looking forward to seeing you get back in there and looking forward to seeing this tournament take place over the rest of this year and who ends up being the champion for the PFL in the 145 featherweight division.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That was Adam Borics right there. As I said, a lot of fights in Bellator before the PFL. We finally got to see him a little bit in the PFL last year, that one fight, but if you're going to talk about experience in this format and how much that can play a part, we'll see for Adam because he has a lot of that with Bellator, and that could, be huge for some of these guys who don't know what that's like.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
You watch playoff games. The playoffs are all that matter, and the league's got an issue. They just don't want to admit it. They brag about how huge they are, how global they are, ratings are through the roof, profits are through the roof. I mean, between the NBA and NHL lying about their ratings and the money they make, I'm sick and tired of it.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I guess this is the battle for second place in the NBA's MVP. It's been Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He was like minus 250 a couple months ago. Then last month it was 3-1. I mean, it's now up to minus 440 here.
Voter fatigue is a real thing, but there is a chance for him to maybe go on a hot tear, go on a stretch that maybe opens the conversation back up a little bit. I wouldn't say Shai's completely out of the woods just yet.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid, and we continue talk to some of the great fighters going to be matching up in some of these fights we have coming down in the next couple of weeks. One of those guys is Devon Simons, the heavyweight who's joining Lights Out Extreme Fighting for their next card. And Devon, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. And before we even talk about your fighting career, I want to say thank you very much. You know, we know that you are a naval veteran. Thank you for your time that you've given to this country and served. You know, what was that experience like for you, and how did that push you into your career now as a heavyweight MMA fighter?
Well, I did 6 years from 18 till 24. I got out back in September of 2020, and there's a lot of character developing. You know, like not everyone you work with is going to be good at their job, and not everyone you're going to work with is going to be as passionate as you are. And then there's also some people who are more passionate, and some people who are better. So it's like there's so much room to learn both knowledge and perspective, and that kind of just gives you a sense of understanding when it comes to learning techniques when it comes to fighting, you know, learning techniques when it comes to jiu-jitsu or striking. And it's like, one, you have to be patient with yourself, but two, you have to be patient with others. This way you can absorb as much knowledge as you can from different realms. So it's helped me quite a bit.
And I'm sure, you know, you'll learn some of your hand-to-hand combat skills there for sure. And you had a long amateur career there. Obviously, part of that, you had a big gap there between 2018 and 2021 while you were serving. You know, how have you felt like that kind of long time? Some fighters, they get into it and they just, you know, have a couple of fights and they jump right into, you know, being a pro and at a very young age, and maybe haven't learned all the things, the life experiences that you have that you know, could help them. And, you know, it takes till later on in their career to really see the best of them. How do you feel like that time that you spent there, the things that you learned, the growing that you did helped you, and, you know, the extra length of your amateur career maybe helping you now as you transition into being a pro in mixed martial arts?
Well, funny story about that. Actually, I got in trouble when I was fighting as an amateur when I was enlisted. So, like you know, your government property and, you know, it's liability issues and whatnot. So, when my command found out I was fighting, they kind of like sat me down, like, "Hey, dude, like we're not gonna like, you know, beat you with a stick or nothing, but like you can't do this." So, I had to stop. I had to take a break. Like, I kept training, but I wasn't allowed to fight on any, like, you know, platforms like that. So I just, you know, I kept my nose down, I stayed focused, and I told everyone like that I was working with, like, "Hey, like this is what I want to do, this is what I'm going to do when I get out." So it feels good to, like, you know, stay committed to that goal in such a long term that it's been years since then. And as soon as I got out, I trained for about another year or so, and then here we are. So it's been a long process, but we've learned a lot. So I'm very thankful for that.
You absolutely have, and you've used that in some great things. You've been a champion in other promotions. You were a East Coast champion in the ADCC, so a guy who has a great grappling experience. Although when you look at your record, both amateur and pro, only one submission win. How do you think how do you use that to find other ways to win? And now in your first 2 pro wins, how do you think that's helped you, that submission wrestling, even though that hasn't been the way that you have finished these fights?
Well, I mean, as a heavyweight, these guys are big, and I'm not like I don't think of myself as a large heavyweight. So if I can avoid going to the ground with these bigger guys, these wider guys, they got these big broad shoulders, these wide frames and whatnot. I don't want to get on the ground and use those techniques if I can finish the fight standing up. If I know that I have more, stamina than these guys, I'll be faster than them on my feet. Then I'll chop them down from there. But if it does go to the ground, if it does get to that point, I am confident and comfortable knowing that I have the tools to handle them down there as well. So I think that it's a cool utility to have in the belt, but I'm not going to go out of my way to use it unless I have to.
Absolutely. Now you'll be using it for Lights Out Extreme Fighting. What drew you to this organization, and how excited are you to make your debut for them and Sean Merriman?
I'm super excited. I actually met Sean Merriman last, a week or so ago. I went to the promotion for Lights Out 22, and I just want to get a feel for the promotion, see what they got, and how they do everything. And it's phenomenally put together. These guys are very professional. And the promotion, it looks really cool to be a part of. So I'm really excited that that I get that chance. And I'm just starting out as a pro. I've been a pro for almost a year now. So I'm doing my best to just showcase my skills on every platform that gives me an opportunity.
Well, we look forward to you showcasing those in Lights Out Extreme Fighting. Devon Simons, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and looking forward to that first fight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. You guys take care.
I talked about AZ Fun a lot, folks, and said when she got back from that knee injury, remember, it's the second ACL tear she's had in her career, that she was going to be a difference maker. UConn is plus 330. They're not going to get challenged again in the Big East until they come out of conference play in a conference tournament. I still like them at plus 330 to win a national championship.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You watch playoff games. The playoffs are all that matter, and the league's got an issue. They just don't want to admit it. They brag about how huge they are, how global they are, ratings are through the roof, profits are through the roof. I mean, between the NBA and NHL lying about their ratings and the money they make, I'm sick and tired of it.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.